AITA for leaving our apartment empty after my girlfriend stayed at her coworker's place? My name is Trevor. I'm 29, and until recently, I thought I was in a solid relationship with my 26-year-old girlfriend, Brixton. We were together for 2.5 years, living together for the last 18 months. I'm a pretty calm guy, not the type to overreact or jump to conclusions. My friends would probably describe me as the stable one in the group, the one who thinks things through before making big decisions. I've always believed in communication, compromise, and giving people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that's why it took me so long to see what was really happening. Looking back, I can now see the red flags I ignored. But at the time, everything seemed normal. Brixton and I met through mutual friends at a party in the summer of 2021. I remember that night clearly because I almost didn't go. I was working on a particularly difficult project and was exhausted, but my friend Hudson convinced me to get out of the house. Brixton was in the kitchen laughing at something someone had said, and when she smiled at me from across the room, I felt like a goofy teenager. She was funny, ambitious, and had a confidence that I really admired. She could work a room like no one I'd ever met, remembering names and making connections effortlessly. I was more of the quiet, observant type, but she seemed to like that. On our first date, she told me she liked that I actually listened when she spoke, not just waited for my turn to talk like most of the guys she'd dated. When we decided to move in together, I was thrilled. I had been renting a nice 2-bedroom apartment in a trendy area for about 3 years, and my lease was up for renewal. The place had hardwood floors, exposed brick walls, and huge windows that let in a lot of natural light. The rent was high, $2,800 a month, but I could afford it and had grown fond of the neighborhood, which was full of nearby coffee shops and restaurants. When Brixton suggested moving in, she said she would contribute to the expenses, and I thought splitting everything would make life easier for both of us. Besides, I was crazy about her and loved the idea of waking up next to her every day. She had been renting a tiny studio apartment across town that she always complained about: thin walls, noisy neighbors, and so on. This is where I made my first mistake, though I didn't see it that way at the time. When we went to add her name to the lease, there were complications because of her credit score. Nothing terrible, just some late credit card payments from college and a student loan that had briefly gone into default. The management company wanted an additional $3,000 security deposit to add her to the lease, or they could accept her as just an occupant with no leasing rights if I maintained all financial responsibility. Brixton was embarrassed about her credit and asked to keep the lease in my name only for now. She promised to fix her credit so she could be added later. She would still pay her half, she assured me, but this way we could save the extra deposit. I agreed because I trusted her and didn't want her to feel bad. Looking back, that was a huge red flag. The first 6 months were good. Brixton did contribute, though not exactly half. She would transfer me about $1,000 a month, which was around 40% of our shared costs. I didn't make a big deal about it. She earned less than me, about $55,000 to my $85,000, and I thought we were building something together. The money wasn't really the issue. I was happy to share my space with her. Those initial months felt like playing house in a good way. We cooked together, binge-watched shows, and spent lazy Sunday mornings in bed reading and drinking coffee. She had a way of making ordinary moments feel special, bringing me my favorite takeout when I was stressed, leaving little notes in my laptop bag. But looking back, even then there were subtle signs I chose to ignore. She never offered to handle administrative things like calling the internet company when it was down or managing apartment repairs. When we went out with my friends, she was pleasant but seemed to view them as obligations rather than people she genuinely enjoyed. And when we talked about the future, moving, vacations, long-term plans, she always deflected with a "we'll see," or "let's just enjoy the present." The problem started slowly. Brixton began going out more often with her coworkers, which I thought was fine at first. Everyone deserves to let off some steam, right? But it became a pattern. She would make plans without telling me until the last minute, or she'd invite me along, but spend the whole time talking to her work friends while I stood there feeling like an outsider. There was one guy from her office, Adrian, who seemed to be at the center of most of these outings. Brixton mentioned him constantly. Adrian knew all the best restaurants. Adrian was hilarious at the office party. I started to joke that she talked about Adrian more than she talked about me, and she would just laugh it off and change the subject. What should have been a red flag was how she talked about him. It wasn't just that she mentioned him a lot, but the way her whole demeanor changed when his name came up. Her face would light up, she'd talk faster, gesticulate more. When I asked questions to learn more about him, she would give vague answers like, "Oh, he's just really creative," or "You'd have to meet him to get it." I remember one night, she came home from a work happy hour absolutely glowing, talking about how Adrian had stood up to their director over a campaign strategy. She went on for 20 minutes about how brave and principled he was, how he wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. I found it odd because Brixton had never shown much interest in office politics, and here she was, getting animated about workplace drama, as if it were the most important thing in the world. Around 8 months into living together, I noticed Brixton started being more secretive with her phone. She had always been pretty open with it. Sometimes she'd even ask me to check a text for her while she was driving, or let me use her phone if mine died. But suddenly, she was taking it everywhere, even to the bathroom, and she placed it face down whenever she set it on a table. When I casually brought it up, she got defensive. "God, Trevor, you're not my keeper. I'm allowed to have privacy." Which was true, of course, but the change felt strange. I let it go because I didn't want to seem controlling, but my gut told me to pay attention. The financial situation also worsened. The $1,000 she gave me each month started coming later and later, and sometimes it was less. She'd say she had unexpected expenses or that work was slow and her commission was down. I asked again about adding her to the lease, thinking it might help her feel more committed to our shared responsibilities, but she always put it off. "Let's wait until I get my credit fully sorted out," she'd say. "I don't want to mess up your good standing with management." Around this time, she also started coming home later. She'd text me at 8 p.m., saying she was grabbing a few drinks after work and would be back around 11, but then she'd roll in at 1 a.m. without much explanation. If I asked, she'd say they went to a few different places or that they just lost track of time. The tipping point came about 3 months ago. I was having dinner with my college friend, Hudson, who happened to work in the same building as Brixton's company. We were catching up when he mentioned seeing her around. "Your girl Brixton is great," he said casually. "I see her and this one tall, dark-haired guy heading out together pretty often. They seem super close." "Adrian?" I asked, knowing exactly who he meant. "Yeah, that's him. They have that work bestie vibe, always laughing about something." I tried to play it cool, but Hudson's comment stuck with me. When I got home, I asked Brixton about Adrian, keeping my tone relaxed. "Oh, Adrian's just a friend," she said, not looking up from her laptop. "Besides, he's seeing someone." But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. It was too quick, too dismissive. Things got progressively weirder in the following weeks. Brixton started working late, more often, claiming they had big projects with tight deadlines. She'd come home exhausted and fall right asleep, so we barely talked. On weekends, she always had plans with friends, and when I suggested we do something together, she'd say she needed her social time and that I was being clingy. I started to feel like a stranger in my own apartment. Brixton came and went as she pleased, contributed less and less to expenses, and treated me like an annoying roommate, not her boyfriend. But every time I tried to talk about it, she turned it back on me. "You're being paranoid and controlling," she'd say. "I need space to be my own person. If you can't handle that, maybe we need to reevaluate this relationship." The threat to reevaluate became her go-to weapon whenever I brought up a concern. It was like she knew I cared more about the relationship than she did, and she used that imbalance to shut down any conversation she didn't want to have. 2 months ago, I decided to be proactive about the lease. The renewal was coming up, and I felt that if we were going to continue living together, it needed to be official and fair. I contacted the management office to inquire about adding her to the lease. The process was simple. We both had to sign. We would both be financially responsible, and yes, they still required the extra security deposit because of her credit. The agent, a nice woman named Janet, explained that they would need income verification from both of us and that we would be equally liable for the rent and any damages. When I brought this up with Brixton, she completely shut down. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and I had just finished explaining what Janet told me. Brixton's expression went from neutral to annoyed in about 2 seconds. "Why are you pushing this so hard?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Things are fine the way they are. Why do you want to complicate everything?" Because it's not fair for me to carry all the financial responsibility while you get all the benefits, I said. If we're really partners, we should be partners in this, too. She set her coffee mug down on the table with more force than necessary. Partners? Trevor, I pay you every month. I buy groceries. I'm not a freeloader. I'm not saying you're a freeloader, I replied carefully. But you're not on the lease. You're not responsible for the utilities. And if something happens to me, or if we break up, you have no legal obligation here. It all falls on me. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee. When she finally looked up, her expression was almost calculating. Fine. Let's table this for now and revisit it in a few months. I'm dealing with some stuff at work, and I can't handle the stress of the lease right now. I agreed to wait, but her reaction made me uneasy. It wasn't just that she didn't want the financial responsibility. It was that she seemed angry I had even brought it up, as if I were being unreasonable for wanting our living arrangement to be equitable and official. I agreed to wait, but I started paying much closer attention to our financial situation. I calculated that I was covering about 75% of all our shared expenses: rent, utilities, groceries, streaming services, everything. Meanwhile, Brixton was saving most of her income, going out constantly, and buying new clothes and gadgets like money was no object. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago, on a Thursday night. I was working late, trying to finish a project due the next day. Brixton had texted me around 6 p.m., saying she was going to a happy hour with colleagues and would be home by 9. By 10:30, I hadn't heard from her, so I sent a text to check in. Hey, love. How's it going? Just checking when you'll be back. No response. By midnight, I was genuinely worried. I called her twice, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I started imagining terrible scenarios. Maybe she'd been in an accident or something had happened at the bar. I was about to start calling hospitals when my phone buzzed at 12:47 a.m. It was a text from Brixton, but it wasn't what I expected. I'm sleeping at Adrian's tonight. Get over it or get out. I stared at that message for a full minute, reading it over and over. Not, hey, we got carried away and Adrian offered me his couch. Not, I'm too drunk to drive and I'm crashing at a friend's place. Nothing. Just a blunt, almost hostile message telling me she was sleeping at another guy's house and I could either suck it up or leave. The audacity of the message hit me like a truck. This woman who lived in my apartment, who contributed a fraction of the expenses, who treated me like an inconvenience, was now staying the night at another man's place and had the nerve to tell me to either accept it or get out. Something clicked in that moment. It wasn't exactly rage, but clarity. I realized I'd been accepting unacceptable behavior for months, making excuses for someone who clearly didn't respect me or our relationship. She had given me an ultimatum: get over it or get out. I chose to get out, but not in the way she expected. I sat there for about 10 minutes, thinking everything through. Then I picked up my phone and texted back. I'm already gone. Short, simple, and true, because mentally, I was already out of that relationship. Then I got to work. First, I called my friend Hudson, who I knew was a night owl. Hey, man, I need a huge favor. Can I crash at your place for a few days? I'll explain everything later, but I need to move some stuff tonight. Hudson, being the great friend he is, didn't hesitate. Of course, man. You okay? I will be, I said. Next, I opened my laptop and logged into the building's management portal. The lease renewal had been sitting in my queue for 2 weeks, waiting for our signatures. Instead of adding Brixton, I processed it for myself alone. Then I called the emergency maintenance line and requested to have the locks changed first thing in the morning, claiming I'd lost my keys. They said someone could be there at 9 a.m. Then I started packing. Not everything, just the essentials. A week's worth of clothes, my laptop, important documents, a few personal items I really cared about. I worked in silence and with efficiency, fueled by pure adrenaline. The whole time, I kept thinking about that text. Get over it or get out. The absolute disrespect. Here I was, supporting this woman financially and emotionally, and she treated me like I was lucky to be in her life, like I should be grateful she graced me with her presence when she wasn't busy sleeping in other men's apartments. By 3 a.m., I had 3 suitcases and a few boxes ready. I loaded them into my car and drove to Hudson's place. He helped me carry everything up to his guest room, took one look at my face, and just said, We'll talk in the morning, man. Get some sleep. But I couldn't sleep. I was too wired, too focused on what I had to do next. At 7 a.m., I was at the bank when it opened. I closed our joint account and opened a new one in my name only. We didn't have much shared money, maybe $800, but I transferred her half to her personal account with a note, closing joint account. Here is your share. The bank teller, a young guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else at 7 in the morning, processed everything without question. He probably dealt with relationship drama all the time. I felt strangely calm as I watched him type, knowing this simple transaction was severing another tie between Brixton and me. At 8 a.m., I called the utility companies and put everything solely in my name, with instructions that any changes required authorization from the account holder. I did the same with the internet, cable, and our streaming platforms. Each call was the same routine, giving my information, explaining that I needed to remove an authorized user, and setting up new security protocols. The most satisfying call was to the cable company. Brixton had insisted we get the premium package with all the movie channels and sports add-ons, even though I barely watch TV. The representative asked if I wanted to downgrade my plan, and I told her to switch me to basic. That alone would save me $120 a month. At 9 a.m. sharp, I was at the apartment when the locksmith arrived. Lost keys, I explained, showing him my ID and the lease agreement. He was an older man with calloused hands who looked like he'd been changing locks for decades. He glanced at the paperwork and got to work without any small talk, which I appreciated. Do you want new hardware or just a rekey of the existing locks? He asked. All new, I said. I want to make sure the old keys don't work. He nodded as if he understood exactly what was happening. Standard practice in these situations, he said diplomatically. While he worked, I called my office and let my boss know I might be a few minutes late, but would be in before our 10:30 meeting. My boss, Victor, was understanding and didn't ask for details. I'd been at the company for 4 years without ever calling in sick or being late, so I'd built up a lot of goodwill. By 10 a.m., I was back at work, running on coffee and determination. My coworkers probably thought I looked like hell, but I had a job to do, and I was going to do it. Around noon, my phone started buzzing. Text from Brixton. Very funny. Where are you? Trevor, this isn't funny anymore. I need to get in. I'm serious. Where the hell are you? I have things to do today. I didn't answer any of them. By 2 p.m., the messages escalated. Trevor, this is ridiculous. Let me in right now. I can't believe you're being this childish over nothing. Adrian and I are just friends. You're acting like a psycho. Still nothing from me. At 4 p.m., she tried calling. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called 6 more times in a row. I blocked her number. At 6 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. This is Adrian. Brixton asked me to text you. She's really upset and just wants to talk. Can you please call her? I blocked that number, too. At 8 p.m., Brixton's sister, Sloane, who I'd always gotten along with, called me. Trevor, what's going on? Brixton called me sobbing, saying you locked her out of the apartment. She says it was all a misunderstanding. Sloane, I said, keeping my voice calm. Did she tell you that she spent the night at another guy's apartment and then texted me to get over it or get out? There was a long pause. What? I sent her a screenshot of the text exchange. I got over it and got out, just like she suggested. The apartment is in my name. I pay all the bills. She made her choice. Oh my God, Trevor. I had no idea. She just told me you two had a fight and you were being vindictive. I'm not being vindictive, Sloane. I'm just done. Sloane sighed. I don't blame you. This is really messed up. But she's panicking because she has nowhere to go. She can go to Adrian's, I said. She seemed pretty comfortable there yesterday. When I hung up with Sloane, I finally let the weight of what I'd done hit me. It wasn't anger driving me anymore. It was clarity. For months, I had accepted less and less while giving more and more. Brixton had treated our relationship like a convenience store, taking what she needed and leaving when she found something better. That text wasn't just disrespectful, it was a test. She wanted to see how much she could get away with, how far she could push before I finally pushed back. Well, now she knew. The next morning, I woke up at Hudson's place feeling more rested than I had in months. I had 17 missed calls from various numbers and about 30 texts, but I ignored them all. I had work to do, and for the first time in a long time, my head felt clear. At lunchtime, I decided to swing by the apartment to grab a few more things. I figured Brixton would be at work, and I wanted to get some books and kitchen items I'd forgotten the night before. But as I pulled into the parking garage, I saw her car. She was sitting inside it, parked right in my assigned spot. When she saw me, she got out immediately, like she'd been waiting for hours. "Trevor, thank God," she said, hurrying toward me. "We need to talk. This is insane." She looked terrible. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup was smeared as if she'd been crying, and she was wearing the same clothes from the day before. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, walking toward the elevator. She followed, talking quickly. "Yes, there is. You're overreacting. Adrian and I are just friends. I was drunk and made a stupid decision to crash at his place instead of driving. That's all." I stopped and looked at her. "Brixton, you didn't text me saying you were too drunk to drive and crashing at a friend's. You texted me, 'Get over it or get out.' Those were your exact words." "I was drunk and angry," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it then?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, clearly scrambling for an excuse that didn't make her look worse. "Look," she continued, "I know I've been distant lately, and I'm sorry. Work has been stressful, and I haven't been the best girlfriend. But we can fix this. We can go to therapy or whatever you want." I kept walking toward the elevator. She trailed behind me. "Trevor, please. I love you. I don't want to lose what we have." I pushed the elevator button and turned to face her. "What exactly do we have, Brixton? Be honest. What do we have?" She blinked, surprised by the question. "We have a relationship," she said weakly. "Do we? Because from where I'm standing, you have a free place to live and someone to split expenses with while you do whatever you want. What do I have?" The elevator arrived, and I stepped inside. She tried to follow, but I held up a hand. "No," I said. "I'm going up to get my things. When I come down, I want you to be gone." "Trevor, wait." The doors closed. Upstairs, I quickly packed another box with kitchen utensils and books. The apartment felt different now, lighter. I realized that for months, I had been walking on eggshells in my own home, always worried about Brixton's mood or whether she would be around. The silence was actually peaceful. When I came back down, she was still there. But she wasn't alone. Adrian was with her. I recognized him from Brixton's Instagram photos, a tall guy with perfectly styled hair and expensive clothes. He looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Trevor," Brixton said as I approached. Adrian wanted to explain about last night. I looked at Adrian, who seemed to shrink under my gaze. "Look, man," Adrian said, his voice uncertain. "Nothing happened last night. Brixton was upset about some work stuff and just needed a place to crash. That's all." "What work stuff?" I asked, genuinely curious. Adrian glanced at Brixton, who suddenly found her shoes extremely interesting. "You know, just office drama," Adrian muttered. "What kind of office drama happens at midnight on a Thursday?" I pressed. Another glance between them. More shoe-gazing from Brixton. "We were at a work event," Adrian said finally. "It ran late." I almost laughed. "What work event?" Brixton told me she was going to a happy hour that ended at 9. The lies were unraveling in real time, and it would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Adrian looked like he wanted to disappear, and Brixton's face was getting redder by the second. "Fine," Brixton blurted out, her desperation turning to anger. "We went out after happy hour. Me, Adrian, and a few people from work. I lost track of time, and when it got late, Adrian offered me his couch. That's it. I was being considerate by texting you instead of just showing up at 3 a.m. and waking you up." "Considerate?" I repeated. "By telling me to get over it or get out." "I was drunk. Being drunk doesn't change your personality, Brixton, it reveals it." That one hit her. She took a step back as if I'd slapped her. "So what? You're just going to throw away 2.5 years over one mistake?" she said, her voice cracking. "It wasn't one mistake," I said calmly. "It was months of you taking me for granted. Months of you treating me like I was lucky to be with you while you did whatever you wanted. Last night was just the final straw." "I can change," she pleaded. "I know I haven't been the best girlfriend, but I can do better. Please, don't do this." I looked at her. I really looked at her, and for the first time in months, I saw her clearly. She wasn't sorry for her behavior. She was sorry for the consequences. She wasn't upset about losing me. She was upset about losing the lifestyle I provided. Brixton, I said quietly, if you wanted to change, you would have. When I asked you to contribute equally to our expenses, you would have changed. When I asked you to put your name on the lease and take on real responsibility, you would have changed. When I told you I felt like a stranger in my own relationship, you would have changed. But you didn't want to change. You wanted me to accept less so you could give less. She started crying, but they felt like manipulative tears rather than genuine ones. Where am I supposed to go? She sobbed. I can't afford a place on my own. And there it was. The real issue. Not that she was losing me, but that she was losing her financial safety net. That sounds like a you problem, I said, repeating something she had told me months ago when I asked her to help out more with groceries. I walked to my car and put the box in the trunk. When I turned back, they were both still standing there, looking shocked. I'll have your things packed up for you to pick up this weekend, I told Brixton. Text me from Adrian's phone to coordinate. Don't contact me otherwise. I got in my car and drove away, leaving them standing in the parking garage. In the rearview mirror, I saw Brixton gesticulating wildly while Adrian just stood there, wishing he was anywhere else on earth. That was a week ago, and the fallout has been exactly what I expected. The first few days were a barrage of attempts to contact me. Texts from unknown numbers, calls from her friends and family, even a message from her mom asking me to reconsider. I blocked every number and ignored every plea. Brixton's sister, Sloane, contacted me again to let me know Brixton was a complete wreck, crashing on friends' couches because she couldn't afford anything decent on her salary. Apparently, she was counting on either eventually moving with me to a cheaper place or on me subsidizing her life indefinitely. She's looking at studio apartments for like $1,800 a month, Sloane told me in another call. That's almost her entire take-home pay just for rent, not even including utilities or anything else. She should have thought about that before she decided to test how much disrespect I would tolerate, I replied. Sloane sighed. I know she messed up, Trevor, but she's hurting. She's suffering the consequences of her choices, I said. I'm not responsible for fixing that. The most pathetic part came about 10 days after the locks were changed. I was at Hudson's place when I got a call from another unknown number. This time, I answered just to tell whoever it was to stop calling, but it was Brixton, and she was completely hysterical. Trevor, please, just listen to me, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I know I screwed everything up. I know I took you for granted, but I can't do this without you. I can't afford an apartment on my own. I've been looking at places all day, and they're all too expensive or in horrible neighborhoods. I need you. Her voice sounded like she'd been crying for hours. I could hear traffic in the background, like she was calling from a parking lot. You need my money, I corrected her. There's a difference. That's not true, she cried. I love you. I made mistakes, but I love you. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent months making me feel like an inconvenience for just existing in my own home. If you loved me, you wouldn't have told me to just accept you sleeping at another man's house or get out. I was drunk and I was stupid, she repeated. It was one night. It was one night that revealed what you really think of me and this relationship, I said. You think so little of me that you believed you could stay at another guy's place, give me an ultimatum about it, and I would just take it because I was that desperate to keep you around. I didn't mean it like that. You did mean it. And you know what? You were almost right. 6 months ago, I probably would have taken it. I would have swallowed my pride and pretended it was fine because I was afraid of losing you. But you pushed too far, Brixton. You finally pushed far enough to wake me up. She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, calculating. What if I pay you back? She said. What if I figure out everything I owe you from the last year and pay you back in installments? Would that change anything? I almost laughed. Even now, even as she was begging me to take her back, she thought this was about money. It's not about money, Brixton. It's about respect, and you can't buy your way into respecting me. But I do respect you, she insisted. I know I didn't show it, but I do. No, you don't. You don't even respect me enough to be honest about why you want me back. You're not calling me because you miss me or because you had some great realization that you love me. You're calling me because you can't afford the lifestyle you want without me. She was quiet again, just crying softly. What about Adrian? I asked. I thought you two were so close. Why isn't he helping you with this? Adrian has a girlfriend, she said quietly. They got back together right after that night. Ah, I said. So you're not crashing at his place anymore. There was a long pause. He said what happened between us was a mistake, that he was drunk and confused about his feelings. He told his girlfriend everything, and they're working things out. So Adrian had thrown her under the bus as soon as things got complicated. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Trevor, please. I know you hate me right now, but I don't hate you, I interrupted. Hating you would imply that I care about you, and I just don't anymore. You took care of that. That seemed to hit her harder than anything else I'd said. She started sobbing again, but I'd heard enough. Lose my number, Brixton. Whatever happens to you from here on out is not my problem. I hung up and blocked that number, too. Hudson, who had been listening from the kitchen, walked over and handed me a beer. Damn, man. That was brutal, but necessary. She made her choices, I said, taking a sip. I'm not responsible for making them comfortable for her. It's been another week since that call, and things are finally quiet. I found a great one-bedroom apartment closer to work, and I'm moving in next weekend. It's smaller than my old place, but it's perfect for me. And not having to subsidize someone else's lifestyle means I can afford to live in a nicer area. The new place has a small balcony overlooking a park, modern appliances, and best of all, it's completely mine. No shared history, no memories of arguments or manipulation, just a fresh start. I've already started planning how I want to set it up, thinking about furniture I actually want instead of compromising on everything. Yesterday, I ran into Sloan at the grocery store, and she gave me an update without my asking. Brixton ended up moving back in with her parents an hour outside the city and is looking for a new job because she can't afford the daily commute to her current one. Apparently, she's telling anyone who will listen that I ruined her life over a single mistake. She just doesn't get it, Sloan said, shaking her head. She keeps talking about that one night like it happened in a vacuum, as if there weren't months of problems leading up to it. Some people are incapable of taking responsibility for their actions, I replied. They always need someone else to be the villain of their story. Sloan nodded. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. I saw her taking advantage of you for months, and I should have said something. I appreciated her words, but I told Sloan I didn't need validation. I knew I'd made the right decision. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.